I experienced a lot of things on Robben Island, and I think it is because during the time that I was working there as a tour guide, there was all these cropped up feelings and emotions because we never had an opportunity to talk about the time in prison. And so these experiences that I had on Robben Island, especially with Mandela, those are experiences that I cherish. During the presidency of the late Nelson Mandela, President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton brought a state visit to South Africa and visited the Robben Island Museum on 27 March 1998, where I was a tour and prison guide at the time. Mrs. Arabia Damon, RIM Protocol and Event Coordinator then, managed the visit. She is the events manager of Robben Island Museum at present. The week prior to the Robben Island visit, all staff were instructed to leave Robben Island for the day of the presidential visit and or to remain locked in their houses during the day of the Americans. Now, we objected on Robben Island. We felt, we were angered by this because coming from the 1980s and being an activist who were involved in the protests during the 1980s, arrested during that time, we didn't like the Americans. We were against capitalism and Cuba, Fidel Castro and the Soviet Union, they were our friends. Of course, the Nordic countries, we received a lot of help from them too. So we were not happy as the staff on Robben Island, but this was the order we were made to believe of the CIA and FBI. I was not vetted and was not allowed to be on Robben Island on this day when the visit took place. I deliberately delayed my departure from the island, and as expected, the need arose for me to be there. And I ended up being given a South African police badge, pinned to the left side of my chest, overlooked by Robben Island Museum Management Head of Operations, Denmark Tungwana, who was a fellow ex-political prisoner working on Robben Island. My job as police officer for the day was to transport the then cabinet ministers of Nelson Mandela in a minibus combi, also known in South Africa as a Zola Bus, on an alternative route to that used by the presidential entourage, which were driven in a Pope Mobile. Now, Ahmed Kathrada conducted the tour of the prison, and inputs were given by Nelson Mandela. This was very important for me because here I was walking close behind the presidents, their wives, Ahmed Kathrada, with the cabinet ministers, Ahmed Kathrada relating their stories of how prison life was during the 1960s, and I using that to offset it against my own experience in Robben Island as a prisoner during the 1980s. So I learned a lot from that because normally I would conduct tours for these protocol visits of ministers, and then I would make that comparison of the times in prison during the 1960s and 1980s. What I like to tell about this visit with a little bit of hesitance is how driving from the airstrip where we picked up now in the Pope Mobile, President Nelson Mandela, President Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Graça Machel, is that I had to drive now this alternative route. And as the ministers were now in the combi, we drove, and they sounded like birds in a tree, making a lot of noise. And I need to concentrate because I just received this instruction, and I need to make sure that these people arrive at the prison in time, then there shouldn't be any problems. And I couldn't concentrate so well with them making this noise at the back, so I decided to take a shorter route through the bushes on Robben Island in a road that's not much used. And as I went into this route, they all grew quiet. No one said a word. Trevor Manuel, late Albert Nassau, they were quiet. And I thought, good, now I got you. Now my ears can have a break. And we arrived in time at the prison and did the tour with Mandela. So for me, it was a good experience to be in control of the cabinet of Nelson Mandela. 15 years later, 2013, I dared to waive another protocol, the one that says it is best not to represent yourself in a court of law, even if you are a lawyer. Chief Justice Mogoeng offered to have an advocate of the High Court appointed to argue my case on my behalf in the Constitutional Court. I declined the offer and insisted to represent myself and to argue my own case against Senior Counsel Vasoni, who appeared for the State Minister of Justice and the National Prosecuting Authority. And at the end of the day, in the Constitutional Court, where I argued before Dereck Grootboom, who was presiding that day, I won with unanimous judgment of all full bench of the Constitutional Court. So it was, for me, a good experience to be in the Constitutional Court and to argue there, and to argue as ex-prisoner before another ex-prisoner sitting in the highest court, the Constitutional Court. But again, my colleagues who were sitting at the back afterwards, when we spoke about my argument in the Constitutional Court, was the fact that I managed, which is something that I still cherish today, is that I managed to be able to get out of myself and to stand next to myself and talk about myself in that case, to not be emotionally involved in what you are arguing. And that for me was one of the great achievements of my life, arguing in the Constitutional Court. Now, I was born, as I said, in Klipplaat, 1966. Klipplaat is a very small town. It's very hard. It's a hard place. It's a rocky place. Its surface almost resembles the surfaces of these planets like the moon, or, you know, it's very dry and hard. And life also in Klipplaat used to be very hard. However, there used to be a small offshoot of the Grootboom that passed not far from my family home. And I remember, and I have always this, even when I was in prison, always these ideas of what a beautiful place it was, because I would go to the river and I'd play in the river, and it would get to nightfall. My mother would call me to come out, and sometimes I would get a hiding. So it was a very beautiful place. But what happened is that the river offshoot is no longer there. From the 1800s, farmers, settlers, upstream, started to build dams on their farms, and they dried up the river on which our people were dependent. And so, to a great extent for me, a lot of people, racist people, who talk about the economy that they built in this country. This economy, as it's written somewhere also in this church, was built on oppression and repression and taking a lot of things away from other people. And so they took my river away in Klipplaat, where I grew up. Now, for me it's very important, and I say this, it's very important that we understand when we read the preamble of the Constitution that we need to respect everyone who contributed to bring this country where it is. But one thing that people need to understand, if we want to really lift this country up, is that we need to take into account what settlement of settlers did to our people.